Welcome to Elemental Energy, the podcast where we discuss how to simplify decarbonization. Here, we will introduce emerging low-carbon energy technologies and give you insight on how to navigate and support the evolving energy landscape. It is our goal to develop content to give you confidence to help transition the market and make low-carbon energy reliable and affordable. I'm your host, Marcia Leonard. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining Elemental Energy today. I am very excited to have our guest on. He is actually one of the first conventional oil and gas industry members that I plan to bring on to Elemental Energy in the future. And I want to say that to remind everybody what the mission of Elemental Energy is. It's to bridge the conventional power generation mind space with the energy transformation space, because let's be real, it really needs to happen. We're all in this together. So today, my guest and I are going to discuss what is that goal? Emissions reduction. We all need to be working in that general direction. We're going to talk about what measures and movements are being taken in the oil and gas industry to obtain that goal. And then we're also going to talk about why we like the term energy transformation versus energy transition. So with that being said, Adam Murray, welcome to Elemental Energy. Please go ahead and introduce yourself further.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Being one of the first conventional oil and gas people, I guess, is an honor. So I was not aware of that. Yeah, my name's Adam Murray, based in Dallas, Texas. I've been in the oil and gas business for almost 20 years now. Pretty much started working selling equipment in more of the upstream capacity, then worked for an engineering firm. Now I make big pieces of midstream equipment and emissions reduction technologies for my current company, WeldFit.
So Adam, when I first reached out to you and started talking to you, one of the things that really interested me in you is that you have been in the oil and gas industry for quite some time, and you're in a space of emissions reductions and sustainability. I mean, is that something that you're really passionate about, or is it something that you just kind of fell into and you see the push continuing to go in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to put it simply, I just don't really like waste. I don't like to waste time. I don't like to waste energy at whatever I'm doing. And I think if conventional oil and gas, midstream oil and gas would work at minimizing waste, in general, the industry would be a lot healthier economically, environmentally, just a much more sustainable industry in general. So that's sort of the approach I take, being more efficient and less waste.
Adam, it kind of just dawned on me too that you're going to be sharing this with your audiences. And I think it might be beneficial for me to introduce myself and a little bit of my background.
You should, yes.
Okay. So everybody, I'm Marcia Leonard, and I actually come to you with 3 generations of oil and gas experience, from my uncles with Weatherly Engineering supporting onshore drilling operations, to my grandfather who has patented blowout prevention valves and has trucked them out to sea himself. Like, I come from a very heavy oil and gas background, and I actually went directly into the pipeline industry when I graduated college. But I always had a very soft spot for the environment. I am a big advocate of taking care of our earth. And when I got into the oil and gas realm, I loved it because I recognized truly how sustainable pipelines were. They're one of the most sustainable things that we can do to our environment, because if you think about what happens transporting all of those products outside the lines, it's so much less safe, and there's so much more impact on the environment. So I come to you all with this amazing background steeped in oil and gas. But over the last couple of years, I currently work with Worley, who is one of the world's largest engineering firms. And I have migrated into a position called the Low Carbon Energy Sector Lead, where I support all low carbon energy projects in North America. And it's a lot of power generation projects. So I was transferred from the world of oil and gas into this amazing power generation space. And I can speak both of the languages because I have been introduced to the power gen side, and I see all of the amazing opportunities to help support the future in the energy space. So my family has now lovingly dubbed me the corporate hippie because, of course, I've, traded sides into this power generation space. But I love it because I can actually see the support for oil and gas, but I also see a different future in the energy transformation and low carbon energy space. So I thought it would be helpful for your audience to understand how that bridging of conventional with this new low carbon energy space is looking. Does that help?
Definitely.
Awesome.
Gives me stuff to share with my people.
Oh, good.
And full transparency, you're going to be on podcast that I serve on. Let's Clear the Air here in about 2 or 3 weeks, right? So that'll be good.
I am looking forward to it, definitely. Adam, when I joined this power generation realm, I'm going to be honest, I did not believe in climate change. And it's taken me a lot of research and a lot of time to come to my new conclusion that I do believe in climate change now. And I believe that we have an impact on it through emissions. And I want to know, what is your candid opinion about climate change? Because let's be real, it's a very political subject.
Yeah, I mean, I think first you have to acknowledge that the Earth's climate is extremely complex. And with all of our computing power and all of the scientists out there, continue to be limitations, to our level of understanding how Mother Earth works, right? I think the ability to predict the future with climate models and things like that has shown us it's not very accurate, at least if you read the front pages of newspapers or talk to Al Gore or whoever else, Greta. But the climate's changing always. I mean, I think that the more people you add, we've added 1 billion people in the last, 20 years or whatever, that has to make some sort of change, right? So I think the climate is changing for sure. That's a scientifically supported phenomenon. But what I don't really agree with is sort of this apocalyptic outlook. I mean, I don't think the Earth's going to end in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 10,000 years maybe. But, I mean, we've been around, the Earth's been around for billions of years. I don't think we're on this clock of 1 minute left on the doomsday clock or whatever. So, I've interviewed a bunch of people about the same question or talked about the same question. And I think Dr. Scott Tinker out of University of Texas and the Switch Energy Alliance said it best. And that's really, I feel like I'm kind of in this radical middle. We're doing our best to try and, be environmental stewards and do the best we can in our industry. But we also understand that, from a human presence and from a livelihood presence and quality of life presence, that hydrocarbons need to exist in some extent. So I think you can support both.
I definitely agree. I look at this energy transformation space as almost like a resource sustainment initiative, because when you let me go back for just 1 second. I really dislike the term energy transition. I think that we did, and nobody likes being broken up with. And I think that we did a very poor job in dubbing this whole industrial revolution that's happening the energy transition, because we are not going to go away from oil and gas. We just need to sustain resources because we are going to have a population that's going to be exploding, to direct them into things that oil and gas, polymers, plastics, fertilizers, components for cars, things that we can direct those resources to that cannot be replaced. Whereas there are some other fuels and different things that applications of this energy transformation space can go.
Yeah.
And that's why I really appreciate and support the term energy transformation, But in this space, it still means that during that transformation time, we all need to be working on emissions reduction, because we have scientific proof that carbon emissions are affecting our atmosphere.
Right.
There have been scientists all over the globe, different countries, working at different data sets and data points who have come together. And that's the basis of the Paris Agreement. And what meeting net zero is about is when you have hundreds of different minds and different data sets saying something similar, coming from a scientific background, it is really important to listen to. And I have just been trying to help others see what is wrong with reducing emissions in our current operations.
Right. Well, and the world's population continues to grow, right? And let's be honest, people, without sounding too insensitive, people are the problem, right? We use energy, we're consumers, we are, a rapidly growing organism on the earth, right? And so, going to zero, net zero, I never really like to try and draw lines in the sand. So zero is like a very specific number, but as long as people exist, we're never going to be at zero. I'm breathing out CO2 right now. So I think that's a little bit of just a coined term. I'm consuming energy. We're using the internet to do this. All of that requires power, energy, whether, wherever it comes from. There really isn't a net zero, right? Like there's always a sum of energy that's getting transformed. And so I think it's how you manage it. There's a balance there there's a balance that's there to be had. And, it's our job as industry, participants and the scientific experts and things like that to help try and identify that balance, I think.
Something I really like to enlighten people and remind people of and arm this with this information is you cannot make more carbon. You cannot make more hydrogen. What we have on the earth, these elements that are here, they are here, but it's about where we actually can store them and push them and produce them. And by putting more carbon into the atmosphere, it's more detrimental. So I support carbon capture and I support the storage of it, because if you're able to displace those molecules, it helps. There is new information out that is showing that methane emissions are much more impactful than that of carbon dioxide. Walk us down the realm, because there's a lot of methane emissions in oil and gas, and that's kind of where you sit. Tell us about that.
Yeah, methane is the product, or at least a major product of oil and gas companies. It's one of the two listed. And so obviously their goal is to produce as much as possible, get as much through pipelines as possible, down to whether they're natural gas power plants or whether they're gas processing facilities where they're creating, plastics and chemicals and whatever else they create with it, or LNG that serves, whether it's more impoverished nations around the world or whether it's established nations, they need energy as well. And US LNG is, I think we recently became the number one LNG exporter in the world. So, that's a good thing. But efficient resource utilization, and waste reduction, like I talked about before, are pretty critical for the industry, right? Like one, that's product going away. So if you want to be sustainable, you're also helping your economic viability, right? Like the more molecules you get into your system and keep in your system, the more profitable you're going to be, the more environmentally friendly you're going to be. Those molecules and dollars just start stacking up two at a time, right? Because you're paying less methane fees or carbon taxes in Canada. US starts that in 2024 with the Inflation Reduction Act stuff. So, the emissions reduction specifically with methane helps that way. But similarly, like you said, methane, the US government uses a 25x methane to carbon impact on the atmosphere. So Anytime you can save a molecule of methane, you're theoretically saving 25 carbons, right? So, whether that's a regulatory thing or whether that's waste reduction, I think anything you can keep in the line is good on multiple levels.
I want to pull a string here really quickly because you hit on a value proposition that I have never really thought about when it comes down to, obviously those producers want to keep as much of the molecule in the pipeline as they possibly can because it's money. So thinking about how you can support others and saying, hey, you need to put these emission sensors on. You need to make sure that you are not having leaks. Like, it's more than just sustainability on that front. It's actually, you're losing dollars
Right.
if you have these leaks.
I mean, that's why flares are so frustrating, right? Like, every system with combustible product needs an emergency flare. I understand that. We're always going to have, some sort of emergency release that will, dissipate product if there's an emergency situation. But, to just hook up a flare to get the oil out and burn the gas just seems super wasteful to me. I mean, if you're going to put one line in, you might as well put two and collect them both. You're already doing the right of way, you're already laying the line. And I think a lot of people are working toward that. Similarly, the ducts are drilled in uncompleted wells. I think a lot of people are drilling and not completing wells because they can't get the midstream companies to hook up as quickly as they would like. So they drill them so that they can get it in their drilling program. They can keep their permits. They can do all the things that are associated with upstream that I'm not an expert on, but they drill them. They just don't complete them. Once the midstream company is able to get there with their lines, then they can complete them and start flowing. So it's a really complicated situation, but I think people are starting to adjust to it. Regulations have certainly starting to catch up to it. Profitability, it was a big, I don't know, there's a decade or so where oil and gas wasn't really profitable. And now that we're starting to get profitable again, they want to tax it. But at least they're starting to think about ROI with some of these sustainability projects, monitoring projects, upgrade projects of equipment. I've seen people putting solar powered, compressors, air compressors, rather than site gas for pneumatic valves. I've seen people, certainly put in full site monitoring stuff. Our company has grown exponentially doing voluntary methane emissions reduction. So anytime you're opening a pipeline or anytime you need to blow down a pipeline, we're capturing that gas and keeping it in the pipeline. So there's a lot of people coming after this in a lot of different angles, which can only be a good thing.
I agree. How much knowledge do you have about the open carbon markets? Do you have much at all?
I don't. I was actually researching that a little bit this morning. It's really interesting how a few people are selling carbon credits and trading carbon credits and doing all of these different things. There are rules on it in various different states. I found California's website, I found Texas's website, but nothing really talks about how I can be a carbon credit salesperson. So I don't know how those companies get registered and how those companies get, vetted from a federal level or from a state level. And so this is my own personal opinion here, but I think it's a little bit of I don't know, it's a snake oil thing a little bit. I think there's value to it, and I'm glad people can get credits for doing what they're doing, but how we track those and how we update those and how we're doing those things, I think people are just getting into that business and starting to make it better.
Oh, you're 100% correct when you say that people are just getting into that business. But what spurred me asking that question is carbon markets are new. And I kind of look at it as like, have you ever had to work with a wetland bank in the pipeline industry?
I have not, no.
Oh, you lucky, lucky person. So what it is it's like if you are going to be producing carbon, It gives you the option to offset your footprint by actually buying carbon credits that are verified and they're validated to say that these are legitimately removed from the atmosphere. There's two types of carbon removal. There's environmental carbon removal, and there's engineered carbon removal. And like environmental, there's so many different variables. Like you're literally going out and measuring an acre of trees and seeing how large that is like, I would be a very tired scientist if I had that job.
Right.
And then second is the engineered side, like direct air capture, where they're literally like, sucking, cleaning air, capturing carbon, sequestering it. And so when it comes down to pipelines, where I'm going with this is I want to know, how is the industry, the midstream industry, really preparing for all of these extra lines going in for carbon dioxide? We could talk about other products like hydrogen and ammonia, but are those conversations being had right now?
They are. Yeah. The reason I was looking was I was trying to track down some information for a customer that, luckily he's a buddy and he just called me asking if I knew anything about it. I need to get more educated on it. I think a lot of people in the midstream and industries, pipeline industry specifically, need to get more educated about it. You ask what people are doing. I think that research is just starting. Certainly no one wants to do business with someone that isn't vetted or credible, or that they can count on to supply those credits and keep track of that stuff. So there's a little bit of hesitancy there, like I said, because no one really has a history. I think the farthest one back I could find was 2009, and that was in California. Who's always kind of led that charge a little bit. But what the industry is doing, I think, is really neat. I presented at the Southern Gas Association on a little bit about what people are doing. So, the molecules are all very different. Hydrogen being a much smaller molecule than methane and other things that we transport in pipelines. So a lot of research is really going into materials and pipeline equipment, valves, fully welded systems, not necessarily even using steel anymore. Carbon steel is primarily what pipelines are made up of, but there are now synthetic, fiber type pipelines that, generally speaking, have the strength of the carbon steel, a little bit less energy intensive to create, or some of my research said, and a little bit easier to move a variety of molecules. So similarly, they're looking at batching through pipelines, and that's where you can run a pig and then run different products through the line. So whether they're running oil or gasoline or ammonia or whatever, you can clean out that pipeline, run ammonia for a couple of days, and then clean out the pipeline and run something else for a couple of days. Certainly that isn't viable yet, but I know people that are working on stuff like that. Yeah, just lots of different things that people are looking at. Everyone kind of has these different ideas, and I'm glad we're talking, and I'm glad I get to talk with a lot of our customers, because really there's not a hub to bring all these ideas together. I think if company A is doing something really neat down in Houston, company B in Denver or Calgary doesn't know what they're doing. A little bit of that's competitive advantage, but I think as an industry, because of this transformation or whatever we want to call it, we can compete, but we also need to work together to make sure that no incidences occur and nothing of a bad nature happens, because, an indictment on one, take the BP, tragedy as an example, is an indictment on everybody, right? The whole industry kind of took a hit and a black eye after that. And, so company A in Houston really needs to be talking to company B in Calgary if it is something of significant importance that can make our industry better, safer, more reliable, et cetera.
So I want to share with you this is not company insight by any means, but since I'm a little bit further upstream in this engineering realm, where I deal with projects who we're talking feasibility studies, like these projects, some of them won't even reach FID, which is, financial decision if they want to build these or not. we get
Right.
to see some really cool projects in the space with hydrogen pipelines and everything. And one of the biggest, this is absolutely worldwide knowledge, one of the biggest pipeline producers who's had this kind of experience is checking out Air Liquide and see what they've been in the hydrogen pipeline industry and hydrogen transportation industry for like over 10 years. And
Right.
Wolf Pipelines is another one who they've been supporting, those chemical metal embrittlement studies and
Mhm.
seeing what it looks like. But I want to really challenge the midstream industry right now to do what you are talking about, is coming together and talking about what does the addition of ammonia look like through these pipelines? What does
Mm.
it look like to, I've never heard of the batching. That's an amazing concept. If we could nail that down, could you think of the chemists who are in the background trying to figure out that
I mean,
amazing?
they do it with different petroleum products now. The trick is, how do you get all the hydrocarbons out, right? It's a tough problem, but I know people that have considered it. Let's just say that.
Wow. Wow. But yeah,
Well, there's hydrogen blending too, right? Like that happens now, where you can put hydrogen in to a certain percentage with natural gas. So, there's a lot of things with the infrastructure that we already have that we can, as long as we're thinking about it in a little bit different way, that we can start to do.
good. I'm so glad to hear that those thoughts are there, because it's going to be very important with this transformation space, especially with hydrogen. Oh my goodness, I don't know what the market is going to look like in 15 years, but I feel that hydrogen will definitely saturate it. Even though we are a natural gas rich country, I think a lot of people are starting to see just how important expansion of our population is and the growth that's happening in
Right.
order to talk about natural gas sustainment for things like heating your homes, cooking, things that we really can't do safely. Like I could never imagine, nor would I want to go and turn on my stove and have it be a hydrogen based gas. That's unfathomable to me, but that's going on. There are studies in the UK right now where they're actually putting communities solely on hydrogen gas. Isn't that a cool concept, but kind of scary at the same time?
Yeah, I saw one get shot down. I can't remember where it was. They were a little bit scared of the molecule leaking. Hydrogen has certainly got a broader combustion segment. So, there's a little bit of risk there, but I think it's an interesting thing on a more controlled level for now, for sure.
Oh man. So Adam, I really do think that we could talk on this subject for a very long time, all day, as a matter of fact. But I want to wrap up our conversation, because what we've done here is hopefully spur people to start asking questions within their industry and to see what we are doing to prepare to help better bridge that gap of what I'm talking about, the conventional oil and gas side with these energy transformation projects. Am I right?
Definitely. I mean, I feel like a lot of what my job is to ask questions, be the voice of the customer, you know, sort of the cog in the wheel at the problem I just talked about, right? Like I get to talk to company A and I get to talk to company B. So it's sort of on us as whether I'm a salesperson or just a friend of the industry to help create those solutions.
So many business development professionals do not give themselves enough credit, in my opinion, Adam, because if you're doing it and you're doing it well, which we both are, is we are finding solutions. And sometimes those solutions are not out there. And it means that we have to engage the right parties to help create the solutions and solve these problems. So, Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to joining you on the air in a few weeks. And I'm so thankful that I'm going to be spending some time in Texas and going to get to, meet with you in person. And everybody stay safe. But as I always sign off, Adam, I don't know if you've heard it yet, but stay happy. Generate your own happiness. That's what this life is about. And if everybody in this industry could just smile. I think we would all be just a little bit easier and lighter hearted throughout this transformation space. Adam, do you want to close us out?
Thanks for having me. I think the more we can continue to have these open conversations, the more interaction. I think the digital wildcatters kind of call them collisions. The more collisions that we can have with various different people, the better. So thanks again.
Oh, my pleasure, Adam. Thank you all so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe so you're notified every time a podcast is released. Find Elemental Energy on Facebook and connect with me, Marsha Leonard, on LinkedIn. But lastly, and most importantly, share this podcast with your family and your friends, especially if you are in the energy industry and you're having an influence on the path of decarbonization. I'm on this journey figuring things out, and I want you guys to come along. So the closer I can get to you and the more I can connect with you, the better this show will be and become. Yes, that was perfect.
One take.
I mean, it blows my mind that there aren't more people out there who are really trying to get this bridge built. And any other people you think that I should bring on to elemental energy from the conventional side, please let me know, because it's really important that, we support both sides throughout this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like to your comment on the show, it's like how many of those projects that you do and look into never make it to FID, mainly because people look at them and they're like, this just isn't economical. Like like even with subsidies, a lot of them don't make sense,
Adam, I am thankful that I've met you.
Yeah, definitely.
And
I'll get you some preliminary questions for our talk as well. You and Andrew, his last name just jumped out of my head and I don't know why. Andrew, my co-host, was a staunch environmentalist, got his climate science MBA at Texas A&M and like hated oil and gas. And then he got an internship at Shell.
Infiltrating from within.
Well, and he realized that you can make a difference from within, and he realized a lot of the people weren't really the devil. They're all trying to do as good as they can, right? And he has a really good story about that. And I don't know if we'll talk about that on the show, but you guys have a really similar background. So I think you two will have ultimately probably a really insightful conversation about, how you came to be where you are and kind of what you're doing. SPL is an interesting company that he works for too. He's on the sort of the environmental side of the testing world. So
nice. Well, Adam, I can't wait to see where we go in the future. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too, Marsha. Bye.
Bye.